The silence wasn't the absence of sound. It was a thing, a heavy, suffocating blanket woven from dread and the low hum of the unseen. A silence that vibrated in my teeth, a silence that tasted like ash and anticipation. My breath itched, caught on the barbed wire of my own fear. The calms crackled one last, defiant sputter, then died, leaving me adrift in a sea of green and brown, the alien landscape of a war I was beginning to understand too late. The sun, a malevolent eye in the bruised sky, watched me, judged me. I was alone. Truly, utterly alone. The weight of it threatened to crush me, to grind me into the unforgiving earth. The jungle pressed in, a living, breathing entity. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, was a potential threat, a phantom enemy lurking just beyond the veil of green. My hand tightened around the grip of my rifle, the cold metal a small comfort in the face of such overwhelming vulnerability. I could feel the sweat trickling down my back, a cold river tracing the contours of my spine. Each drop a reminder of my mortality, of the precariousness of my existence here, in this place where life and death danced a macabre waltz. The air itself felt thick, heavy with the scent of decay and the promise of rain. A storm was coming, I could feel it in my bones, a storm that mirrored the turmoil raging within me. The last transmission, a garbled mess of static and fear, echoed in my mind. A desperate plea for extraction, a name lost in the noise. Was it Miller? Or Davis? It didn't matter now. They were gone, swallowed by the jungle, by the war. And I was next. The thought was a cold, hard knot in my stomach, a reminder of the stakes. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the noise, the fear, the crushing weight of my isolation. But it was no use. The silence was too loud, the jungle too close, the war too real. It always came back to the porch swing. The rhythmic creak, the gentle sway, the soft glow of the fireflies blinking in the twilight. That porch swing, back home in Georgia, was the center of my universe, the place where I learned to dream, to hope, to love. It was where my grandfather, a man carved from oak and weathered by time, taught me the constellations, tracing the patterns in the night sky with a calloused finger. He'd tell me stories of his own time in the service, tales of bravery and sacrifice, but also of loss and regret. He never glorified war, never painted it as anything other than a necessary evil. He'd look at me, his eyes filled with a sadness that I couldn't understand then, and say, "Remember who you are, boy. Remember what you're fighting for." And I remembered. I remembered the smell of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass, the sound of my grandmother's laughter, the warmth of her hand in mine. I remembered Sarah, her hair the color of sunshine, her eyes the blue of the summer sky. We'd spend hours on that porch swing, whispering secrets and dreams, building a future that now seemed impossibly distant. She'd lace her fingers through mine, her touch electric, promising a lifetime of shared sunsets and whispered promises. We were invincible then, young and full of hope, oblivious to the darkness that lurked just beyond the horizon. Grandpa always said I had a stubborn streak, a refusal to back down from a challenge. He said it was a good thing, a necessary thing, for a soldier. But I knew it was more than that. It was a deep-seated belief in something bigger than myself, a conviction that right would ultimately prevail. He instilled in me a sense of duty, a responsibility to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. He'd point to the American flag, waving proudly in the breeze, and say, "That flag represents something, son. It represents freedom, justice, and opportunity for all. Don't ever forget that." Sarah, though, she worried. She saw the darkness in the world, the potential for cruelty and destruction. She tried to soften my edges, to remind me of the beauty that still existed amidst the chaos. She'd bring me wildflowers, their delicate petals a stark contrast to the harshness of the world. She'd read me poetry, her voice soft and soothing, a balm to my restless soul. She understood the burden I carried, the weight of expectations and responsibilities. She never asked me to change, but she always reminded me to hold on to the things that made me human. The last time I saw her, on that porch swing, she held my face in her hands and looked at me with those clear blue eyes. "Come back to me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Promise me you'll come back. I promised, of course. A promise made with the best of intentions, a promise that now seemed like a cruel joke. The memory of her face, etched in my mind, was a beacon in the darkness, a reminder of what I was fighting for, of what I had to lose. It was a fragile flame, flickering in the wind, but it was enough to keep me going, to keep me breathing, to keep me alive. The radio crackled, then died. Just like that. Gone. Leaving a vacuum in its wake, a silence so profound it felt like a physical blow. My stomach dropped. I fiddled with the dials, frantic, but the only sound was the hiss of static, a mocking reminder of our isolation. Liam cursed under his breath, his face a mask of grim determination. He knew what this meant. We were alone. Truly alone. The world seemed to shrink, the trees closing in, the enemy a tangible presence just beyond the tree line. The mission, already teetering on the edge of disaster, now felt like a suicide pact. We were supposed to be ghosts, in and out, a whisper in the wind. Now we were exposed, vulnerable, adrift in a sea of hostility. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind, but Liam's steady gaze pulled me back. He was a rock in the storm, his years of experience etched onto his face. All right, he said, his voice low and steady. Plan B. We stick to the plan as much as we can. Get the intel, get out. We move faster, quieter. And we trust each other. Got it? I nodded, forcing myself to meet his eyes. Trust. That was all we had left. Trust in our training, trust in our instincts, and trust in each other. We packed our gear, the weight of it a physical manifestation of the burden we carried. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. We were walking on a tightrope, one wrong step and we'd fall into the abyss. We pushed on, deeper into enemy territory, the silence broken only by the pounding of my heart. The objective was close, I could feel it, but the closer we got, the more intense the feeling of being watched became. Like a predator stalking its prey, unseen but always present. Then it happened. An ambush. A sudden, violent eruption of gunfire. The world exploded in a chaos of noise and movement. Liam yelled, shoving me behind a fallen log. Bullets ripped through the air, tearing leaves from the trees, kicking up dirt. We were pinned down, outnumbered, outgunned. I remember the roar of the guns, the acrid smell of gunpowder, the fear, raw and visceral, that threatened to consume me. I remember Liam, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, firing back with unwavering precision. He was a whirlwind of controlled violence, protecting me, buying us time. And then I saw him fall. A single shot, clean and precise, to the chest. He crumpled to the ground, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The world seemed to slow down, the noise fading into a dull roar. I crawled to him, my hands trembling, my heart shattering into a million pieces. Liam! I cried, my voice choked with emotion. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and love. He tried to speak, but blood bubbled from his lips. He reached out, his hand closing around mine, his grip weak but firm. Get out of here, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Finish the mission. Don't let them win. Then, his eyes glazed over, his grip loosened, and he was gone. Just like that. Gone. Leaving me alone in the heart of enemy territory, with nothing but a broken heart and a burning desire for revenge. The silence in the apartment is different now. It's not the silence of shared comfort, of unspoken understanding. It's the silence of absence, of loss, a hollow echo that reverberates through every room. I can almost hear Liam's laughter, see the glint in his eyes, feel the reassuring weight of his hand on my shoulder. But he's not here. He'll never be here again. The nightmares are relentless. I wake up in a cold sweat, the roar of gunfire still ringing in my ears, the image of Liam's lifeless eyes seared into my memory. I try to push it away, to find some semblance of peace, but the memories are like shards of glass, embedded deep within my soul. I drink too much. It numbs the pain, if only for a little while. But the numbness always fades, leaving me feeling emptier and more lost than before. Sometimes, I catch myself staring into the mirror, searching for a flicker of the person I used to be. But all I see is a ghost, haunted by the past, unable to escape the shadows of war. The medals they gave me mean nothing. The accolades, the recognition, they're all hollow. They can't bring Liam back. They can't erase the pain. They can't fill the void that he left behind. I tried to go back to a normal life, to pretend that everything was okay. But it was a lie. A cruel, self-deceptive lie. I see a therapist. She asks me about my feelings, about my trauma. I try to explain, but the words get caught in my throat. How can I describe the horror, the fear, the guilt? How can I convey the weight of the burden I carry? She tells me it takes time. That healing is a process. But some wounds never heal. Some scars run too deep. I still see his family. His mother, his sister. They know what happened. They understand. But their grief is a mirror, reflecting my own pain back at me. I see the unspoken question in their eyes, why him? Why not you? And I have no answer. Only guilt. A crushing, suffocating guilt that threatens to drown me. Sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and still, I go to the park. I sit on the bench where we used to meet, where we used to talk about our dreams, our hopes, our fears. I close my eyes and try to imagine him beside me, his arm around my shoulder, his voice in my ear. But it's just a fleeting illusion. A cruel reminder of what I've lost. The mission was a success. We got the intel. We stopped the enemy. But at what cost? Liam paid the ultimate price. And I'm left to live with the consequences, forever haunted by the memory of his sacrifice. The war may be over, but the battle within me rages on. A battle against the darkness, against the pain, against the ghosts of the past. A battle I may never win. The calms crackled back to life, a fragile thread in the suffocating darkness. But it wasn't command. It was Elara. Her voice, thin and reedy, barely audible above the static, cut through the tension like a shard of ice. Jax. I'm here. Underneath, the heart of it. Relief, so profound it bordered on pain, washed over Jax. He gripped his rifle tighter, his knuckles white. Elara, what's happening? What did you find? A pause, thick with unspoken horror. Then, they're not soldiers, Jax. Not anymore. They're connected. A hive. The signal, it's not just communication. It's control. They're all extensions of something ancient. He remembered the dead eyes, the vacant stares, the unnerving synchronicity of their movements. It wasn't discipline. It was something far more sinister. The source? Below. Deep below. A chamber, pulsing with energy. A device or something else. Something alive. Her voice hitched, choked with emotion. Jax, it's feeding on them. On their minds, their souls. He didn't need to ask what she meant. He understood. The enemy wasn't just fighting a war. They were sacrificing themselves to something far older, far more malevolent. I can disable it. Elara continued, her voice gaining strength, a newfound resolve hardening her tone. But I need time. I'm exposed. We're coming to you, Jax said, his voice firm, brooking no argument. Hold on. The breach was a bloodbath. The enemy, alerted to their presence, swarmed from the shadows, their movements jerky and unnatural. Each kill felt like a desecration, a mercy offered to a puppet dancing on strings of unimaginable horror. They fought their way down, deeper and deeper, the air growing thick with a palpable sense of dread. The temperature plummeted, and a low, resonant hum vibrated through their bones. Finally, they reached the chamber. It was vast and circular, the walls lined with pulsating veins of light. In the center, a colossal structure of obsidian and bone pulsed with an unholy energy. Tendrils of light snaked out from it, connecting to the figures that ringed the chamber, their faces blank, their bodies swaying rhythmically. Elara was there, kneeling before a console, her fingers flying across the keys. A dozen enemies surrounded her, frozen in place, their connection to the central structure momentarily severed. "Jax! Get it offline!" she shouted, not turning. "Before they reconnect!" He didn't hesitate. He charged, firing bursts of suppressing fire, clearing a path to the structure. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive. He planted the charges, the timer ticking down with agonizing slowness. The enemy began to stir, their eyes snapping back into focus, filled with a primal, unadulterated rage. They lunged, their movements desperate, their screams echoing through the chamber. They fought back to back, a desperate dance of survival against overwhelming odds. Bullets ripped through the air, bodies fell, the air thick with the stench of blood and ozone. The timer reached 0. The explosion ripped through the chamber, a blinding flash of light followed by a deafening roar. The structure buckled, cracked, and then shattered, its energy dissipating in a wave of pure force. The tendrils of light retracted, the figures collapsing to the ground, lifeless husks. The humming ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. Jack staggered, blinded and deafened, but alive. He saw Alara, her face streaked with grime and blood, but her eyes shining with triumph. He reached for her, pulled her into a tight embrace. The silence stretched, heavy and profound. Then, a new sound, faint but unmistakable, birdsong. He looked up, and through the shattered ceiling, he saw a sliver of blue sky. The sun, a distant promise of warmth and hope, peeked through the clouds. They had severed the connection. They had broken the hive. But the victory felt hollow. He looked at the fallen, both friend and foe, their faces frozen in expressions of pain and despair. He knew the war wasn't over. There would be others, other hives, other ancient horrors lurking in the shadows. He looked at Alara, her face etched with weariness, but her eyes filled with a quiet strength. He knew in that moment that they would face them together. That even in the darkest of nights, even when communication was lost, hope, like a fragile signal, could still find its way through. They would carry the memory of this place, the weight of this sacrifice, and they would fight on, for the chance to see the sun rise again. The calms remained silent, but within them, a different connection, forged in fire and loss, resonated stronger than any signal. They were not alone. They had each other. And that, in the end, was enough.